San Cristobal, whatever, and we're going to plant the church there. So you come up with that, and then you work together. Okay, what kind of information would you want to read? Well, I want to know all about Cuba. I want to know about launching good mission trips. So let's do a lot of research on the history of Cuba, the community you're studying, the people there, the history of the Assemblies of God in Cuba, your particular congregation, but also your own church's history with mission trips. Also, what is conventional wisdom on how to lead mission trip effectively? And then you put together that contextual study by that week there, and then you begin to write. You will actually jump into the methodology phase before you do the trip, and perhaps what we're setting down here as due dates can be in flux a little bit. It may be better to get some of that stuff done a little bit more quickly. So then you would have your methodology piece all together. Here's how we're going to do the trip. Okay, you go on the trip, you come back, then you do your evaluation, your assessment of the trip and the process. Was this trip a better trip because you did all this research into it before you did it? How was the trip effective? What's going to happen there because of that? What are those things that are in place there? That would be the 30-page paper that would be concluded there along the way. So you can see those particular assessments. You would be the grader for every one of these here. We give them 5% of the course grade for that first 3-page paper, identifying the challenge, 20% for the contextual study, then another 15% for just the regular interaction, were they staying on track, and then the journal 10%, 30% for the actually, the numbers are off a little bit. It should be 50% there for that final paper altogether. So you kind of do those. So as you do this, of course, in your role of these terms is to ensure that they are addressing an appropriate challenge. Should be narrow, something they can do in one term. Should be research-oriented and contextual. They should provide a good rationale for the project. Use adequate sources that are appropriate. About 2,000 pages is the goal. Should involve doctoral level research, writing, and thought. As they write, be sure you address not just the grammar, but are they arguing well? Are they using their sources well? Is this good doctoral level writing? Giving a quick turnaround on their drafts, and I want to encourage use of drafts. It means you have to read everything twice, but you will help them be better writers if you are doing this, and you will receive the benefit when you are grading their dissertation. If you help them cultivate them as better writers in their second semester, by the time on their sixth, they will be a lot better. So, some options. They can do a project that is implemented within the term. As I was saying, a mission trip or a single event, something that they can do, get it done. They can go back and evaluate it for that last piece of the process. That works great, wonderful. But it doesn't have to be that. They could be something that they will launch later, that the term that you are doing this is all research and planning, and it will be launched in the next fall. Like suppose, for example, Andrew's person is a pastor looking at planning a second campus. We want to become a multi-site church. I want to do that for my project. But we're going to launch in September. Well, great. That January through May is a great time to do the research for it. You can do the research, but when you get to the evaluation portion of your paper, you can't evaluate it because you haven't done it yet. But what you can evaluate is how has the process worked for me? And the second thing you can say is how will I evaluate whether or not it's been a successful implementation? And talk about when does that evaluation happen, what are going to be the measures, what are the things you're going to look for. You can ask the student to do that. And then the other opportunity is this can be a 2-part process or even a 4-part process. That is something that you're going to look at a longer term development, and what happens in contextual engagement 1 will continue the following year in contextual engagement 2, and perhaps even lead over into the dissertation. In that case, the evaluation process is going to look at how has the process gone so far, how has it been helpful, and then what do I need to address in my future project? What are some of those things that we need to do there along the way? Any questions on that? Make sense? Yeah, Ken?
Is there any process that we go through in this program that addresses them personally as their own strengths, what they bring to the table in the context that they're trying to impact?
Yeah, good question. I would assume depending, like especially the spiritual formation class is going to be a key part of that. In terms of within this particular class itself, it's not a set part of the program, but that's the goal of mentorship. And Jim, in reading the manual, you can see you're wanting them to be involved with that.
I would also, while you're looking at resources, as they're assessing what the challenge is, I think there's 3 avenues of resources. There's the external resources, what books are out there, but there's also internal resources. How has God gifted me? What do I bring to the table based on my personality, my education, my whatever? There's the spiritual, eternal resource. But so I think that can be incorporated in that as well. Being analytical is also analyzing your own tools. So I would encourage that to be part of it. Now, when you are doing the first contextual engagement, that is the same term that you're also they're going through that spiritual formation. So they will be wrestling with some of those things in their that week engagement and then their post-course assignments with that. So they'll be having kind of 2 conversations. One will be their own spiritual walk and journey, but they'll also be having this conversation with you as to how to address this context challenge.
Here's some possible ideas, and this is in no way an exhaustive list. I mean, really, it will be up to you as the mentor to approve, disapprove. If you want to go to Jim with, I don't know, would this work or not? I think that would be Jim's prerogative to give some feedback, but ultimately, it's up to you to say, does it meet this? Just your student, your protege may or may not be struggling with some, I don't know what to do with this. So let me just give you some ideas. You want to launch a new ministry program in the local congregation. Maybe there's a group of people you want to reach. You want to get to know more about that particular group. You're seeing a group of immigrants from a certain area moving into your community, and you want to reach them, so you study how can I better reach that person. Looking at planning a new church campus. Maybe you've got an existing ministry. You're wondering, is it effective? Is it not? You want to do a study for that. Maybe you do a self-study of your ministry or your church. Do a secret worshiper experience evaluation, have somebody evaluate your own particular congregation service there. You want to train your leaders more effectively. Do some sort of a retreat or event, missions trip. You want to write a spiritual formation book for new believers. There's an issue of theology that you want to study, take a look at, or maybe study the theology of a particular group or worship service, something there. Take a look at history. You can integrate historical theology as well as something like that. And maybe even deal with this theological statement for a current issue, something that's going on right now, like coming up with a statement for how you're going to address the issue of same-sex marriage now that's legalized. And so really, a big, huge realm of what can happen. What needs to happen is it needs to be research-based. It needs to involve doctoral level research. And it needs to, in one sense or another, be practical. But you think about it, ultimately, even the most theoretical of philosophical and theological concepts have some connection to reality for people. So we want to give them some room to dream and to think about that. But your goal as mentors is to be sure that they can do it and get it done. And that's the big part right there. Our prayer is that we can see that ABD number decrease significantly because our students have that connection with a mentor who's going to help them. So your big part is to encourage them, communicate regularly, keep them on track, respond quickly when they come to you. And the challenge for us who are in education is, unfortunately, this term happens when we're in school, and we got a lot of stuff, and we see all of our undergrads here and there in our face, and the people we see on campus on a regular basis, and that mentee is going to be pastoring someplace else. It's easy to let that email slip to the back, but can we be sure that we stay up on that, because our program and our future really depends on that. So at the beginning time, really help them identify and narrow their research question. What is it that they're going to take a look at? Provide salient, well thought out feedback on the approach and spaces, really every step of that process. Do not hesitate to recommend alternatives. Do not fall into the temptation of giving simple answers for what should I do? Well, your job's not to tell them what they should do. Your job is to help them figure out what they should do. So a question is better than an answer in most cases in these kind of things. At the same time, though, suggest specific improvements, ways things can be improved. And we want to encourage, our goal will be to increase the budget that we have to be able to have the mentors travel to every one of our mentees. Right now, we don't have that, but if they are within a couple hours and you want to go visit them on a weekend, or even take time off if you've got somebody to cover your classes so you can go and see them on site. We would love to see that happen and enable that to happen. And of course, to record their grades. So any questions on, and that's the one specific component is this contextual engagement course went into.
I'm not suggesting that we would want to do this. It's really a very innocent question. So we don't have a rubric for grading the research paper or anything like that. It's just a...
We will.
We will?
We can, yeah. There should be some, but it should be pretty broad.
Right. I'm just wondering about, like, the discrepancies between the way different people grade and, you know, those kinds of things.
Right.
Nobody will want the person who's a hard grader.
You know what, that's so funny is that as I read course evaluations, our hardest graders are some of the get some of the best scores.
That's true.
So, but we should have some basics like the length of writing and the number of sources and you know and the level of grammar and argumentation. So some of those basic kind of things should
like
still
that. So
be
we
in
will
there.
have something like that. That'll be
Right.
good.
Well, they don't get this instruction in your first class, as far as
Right.
just the guidelines. So
Yes,
they'll-
yeah.
They'll get this straight up front.
Right, yeah.
Okay, good.
And in fact, that's a big part of what that class is about. It's about how do we take and more of the theoretical big picture stuff, but we will take at least one part of the class to talk about these 4 steps of the process. I used the word say 4, it's really 3, but the 2 contextual engagement classes and then your 2 dissertation classes, so that they can be thinking through that. Our goal is, in fact, Jim has already got them thinking about this. And you will see, we got together and got to play matchmaker, based on what they're saying they want to do. There's a few students who have no idea, but 80% of them already know what they want to do their
That's great.
presentations on.
That's
So,
fantastic.
Oh, that's good.
yeah, Dan.
I lost my train of thought.
Okay.
For those that start reading some of this empirical research and get lit up to do quantitative research, are we going to provide them some type of outlet to get trained in SPSS or something like that? To me, I have a personal aversion to all that. I break out in hives just talking about it right now. But I mean, some may get lit up when they read some of this stuff. You know, we're going to provide anything.
Well, and then I'm assigning Cresswell, so we're not getting them like the EdD. So it's really interesting looking at the EdD curriculum, 60 credit hours versus our 36. And Andrew probably knows better than I do, but about half of it is research. I mean, they have a whole class, I think at least if not 2, on quantitative research. So we're not anticipating that, but I don't want to forbid them from doing that. So I will address a little bit of quantitative research. They will look at some of the other things, and just as long as we don't sell them, you're graduating as an expert in quantitative research.
Yeah, sure.
But if they want to do surveys, if they want to do studies of data, of demographics, I think I want to say absolutely please do.
Could they do a class like that conceivably if they wanted to do an elective or something? One of their
We don't have it in a
electives?
program. We could
Would that
look at
be-
doing a substitution.
Yeah.
I mean, if they
You don't
felt
have
like
electives? I thought I saw that somewhere.
we're going to have, the way our program is structured, we're 4, 4, and 4. We have 4
Oh.
core classes, the 4 individualized courses, and the 4 tracks.
Oh.
Right now, we got as a leadership
I was
track,
looking at the,
but at some
MDiv
point we can do
requirements, I
that.
think.
Yeah, MDiv has electives.
So, is there a part of this class where you talk about effective use of internet sources?
Yeah, that will be something we'll take a look at.
Because I'm thinking, like, in different areas of research, it can be actually an excellent place and really up to date.
Right.
You need to be able to, sift through that properly and know what's a quality source and what's not. Particularly, like, in a cutting edge field, where people are just out there, they're trying new stuff, but even a certain group of people almost never make it into the academic world. And yet their research is amazing, but just sorting through even if their lack of ability to put things in research, properly, but they're doing great stuff.
And that would be the distinction between a DMin and a PhD is we can accept some sources that may not cut the academic mold, we don't put the level of stock in it. It's not a peer-reviewed journal, but the fact is, the fastest growing churches, those guys don't have PhDs, you know,
Right.
you know, and yet is there still something we can learn from why it's working?
Right.
And that's what we want our students to go in there and do that. And again, it gets to the multidisciplinary nature of the amen. We can look at the real world stuff and what other people are writing, as long as we understand at the end of the day, here's the value of the academic peer-reviewed
And
writing.
be able to process that while they're doing the work, so that they understand this could potentially be, but don't, it's not like just lock, stock, and barrel. Hey, this guy said it's a great source.
Right. Right, okay, Jim?
Thanks,
Back
Alan.
to you.
You're gonna send us all of this, Alan?
You want all the PowerPoints and stuff?
That'd be
Yeah,
really-
yeah, Jim can send both his and mine there, so.
That'd be perfect.
And then we'll have the video available too.
Excellent.
Thanks a lot, Alan. Did you want to also note?
Thanks for the book, by the way.
Yeah.
That was very good, by the way. A lot of content.
In regards to the potential engagement, we've structured it to be mini projects. There's the final doctoral project, but if you look carefully at what the manual says about the doctoral project and what's in this syllabus, the steps are pretty close. Andrew, you were talking about how can we gauge this in terms of a grading? Well, there's those specifics that you and Alan had mentioned, but there's about 7 steps here that if I would be looking in their paper for these steps, to what degree did you identify the potential challenge? That's important. That's why we have them do that initial 3-page draft. Second, establish the purpose in addressing the challenge. Have you been thinking and articulating why? What is the purpose to this? Conducting the contextual study, that's going to be the bulk pretty much of what that paper is going to be about, is the theological, sociological, biblical context, the research of the literature. Set the goals and objectives. I'm going to be reading, trying to find, okay, did you clarify what those goals are? What are those SMART goals? Have you made it simple, measurable, achievable, reasonable, time with a timetable? Is it clearly in there? And those objectives, what steps did you articulate to get there? Select methodology. How are you going to complete this? And what sort of approaches are going to be there? And then the implementation, describe how you did it. I think the journal is a very personal aspect of that, but it will help them, at least give them some insights. For them to know this is what we're looking for, that might help them also to be thinking in this direction, but also to prepare them in their writing so that they know what to expect. But that is just a small facet or a microcosm, if you would, of what the larger project is going to be. So help them out. I have a feeling the biggest challenge they're going to have is they're going to want to make that contextual engagement project so big that it ends up being really should have been their major project. We're going to have them refine that. Alan had an example of their church planting. I think it's a huge thing for a contextual engagement class. Probably not. But one of those steps for that is, I wonder if we can come up with some sort of rubric to assess and equip potential church planters. What tool is there? Well, maybe we can make that the project. Or maybe develop some kind of demographics for the context. Why are we going to, whatever it might be, but there's some facets they can do to make that the bigger project, to help out with the bigger project if that's going to be the case. But help them not to take too big of a bite of something that is really not intended for these. For the most part, it's to give them an example of what the big project's going to be. So here's, in terms of the doctoral research project, here's some of the responsibilities that you will have. Provide the student with guidance, direction, and evaluation. Those are 3 important words for the formation of the research topic request. All from the topic request all the way to the oral defense. You will be there to guide them, direct them, and help to evaluate their progress from beginning to end, bottom line. Be an active member within the student's doctoral project committee. There are 3 in this the student doctoral project committee, the 3 readers. Assist the student in refining the topic for the research project. provide guidance and accountability during the implementation of that project. Also assist the student in analyzing and articulating implications for the theological, ministerial leadership. Ehler had mentioned this even with the smaller contextual engagement courses. Don't give them the answers, but prod them on.